I'm going to be taking a look at some of the best performances of individual players in the 2020 season for the New Orleans Saints. When you play a team sport, you don't often get an opportunity to bask in your individual performances, but we can do it for the players. So we're going to start today with Malcolm Jenkins. If you have an individual performance that you want to give a shout out on an episode, make sure that you drop it in the comments below on YouTube. Or if you're listening on the podcast, you can go ahead and hit me up at Ross Jackson Nola via DM, or you can just tweet at me as well. Let me know what player and what you think their best individual performance was in the 2020 season. I wanted to start off with Malcolm Jenkins because this performance that he had against the Green Bay Packers in week 3 is a performance that Locked On Packers host Peter Bukowski and I talked about for like a week after this game came to an end. And it's a perfect example of why I like to do this series, because you don't often get to shout out players for individual performances in losses, but this is a perfect example of why, just because the team didn't succeed, we can still celebrate the individual, because we saw a great individual performance from Malcolm Jenkins. Now remember, this was Malcolm Jenkins' first year back with the New Orleans Saints after spending 6 years in Philadelphia. After leaving New Orleans, he now gets an opportunity to come back, and he made his return felt immediately. Now, I know a lot of people are going to look at the Mercedes Lewis touchdown that he is credited as allowing, and that he did allow in that game, and say, Ross, how can you say that he gave up a touchdown and this was his best individual performance? If you take in consideration the system that he was up against, the quarterback he was up against, and the coach he was up against, the play caller, I think there's a lot more than just that one play that defines this as Malcolm Jenkins' top performance of the 2020 season. I could have looked at the Week 17 game up against Carolina, but rookie head coach, rookie offensive coordinator, PJ Walker, and an injured Teddy Bridgewater, the opposing quarterbacks in that one. I'm not really looking at that game. I'm looking at where he was up against elite play callers and elite playmakers up against the Green Bay Packers. So yes, he did give up that touchdown against Mercedes Lewis, which, I mean, if you listen to the commentators, you listen to the rules experts, everybody there was kind of talking about how that was a bit of a push off by Mercedes Lewis. But even if you do credit that against him, his ability to be in coverage in that moment and recognize what it is that the Green Bay Packers were doing is still very impressive. He shouldn't have even been able to be in coverage on that tight end wheel route. If we're being honest, there was the play action there. He didn't bite to it. He had great coverage. He ended up carrying Mercedes Lewis all the way up the sideline, a fantastic play. And that's exactly what we saw from him consistently over this week 3 matchup. He had a very good understanding of what it is that Green Bay does successfully. This is an offense that's predicated on pre-snap motion confusing defenses and crossing routes creating congestion over the middle of the field. Never did it bother Malcolm Jenkins at all. You saw him making plays in the run game. You saw him making plays as a pass rusher. He had 9 tackles in this game, a hit on the quarterback, and 2 pressures. Those 9 tackles were his second highest amount of the 2020 season. And then outside of that, you saw him playing deep coverage from deep zone safety looks at the very beginning of plays, dropping into deep zones from the A gap or playing up against the line of scrimmage. And then you saw him also play and take away plays over the middle of the field. And a perfect example of that happened in the end of the second half, which was great timing for the Saints. We'll talk about why in a moment, but this was a fantastic moment. And remember, there's no fans in the stands during this game, or I think if I remember correctly, there were like 750 fans in the stands. It was friends and family for the Saints team, but that was it. And this opened up an opportunity as a viewer from home to really be able to see sort of the intricacies in the chess match of the game of football. In this play, you end up seeing both Malcolm Jenkins and Demario Davis in the A gaps. Remember, the A gaps are the gaps that are between the guard and center on either side. And this is something that the Saints do very commonly on third downs. This was a 3rd and 8. The Saints trying to get the ball back so that they can execute a 2-minute drill and try to take the lead, which is exactly what they would do. But they're threatening in the A gaps. You see PJ Williams looking like he's going to come off of the offensive left side after a couple of moments and adjustments from Aaron Rodgers. He sees PJ Williams threatening, changes the play. But while he's changing the play, you see the chess game begin as Demario Davis and Malcolm Jenkins start communicating to their defense to also change what they're looking at doing here. You see PJ Williams drop back, but then you see Marcus Williams come up on the opposite side. Once the ball is snapped, you see Marcus Williams blitz off the right side, which I don't think Aaron Rodgers was expecting because he rushed to get the ball out, even though the pass protection was actually there. However, Malcolm Jenkins, after helping to make all of the adjustments and get everybody set up with Demario Davis, ends up coming from the offensive left A gap to coming across the field to stop a crossing route by Allen Lazard that's coming over from the right side of the field. So he ends up not contributing to the congestion in the middle of the field, which is what Green Bay and Matt LaFleur want to create. Instead, he ends up counteracting it by stopping that route pretty much cold in its tracks. And once that happens, Aaron Rodgers ends up just releasing a prayer down the right sideline. It falls incomplete. The Green Bay Packers punt, and then you get the ball back in Drew Brees' hands, who leads another beautiful 2-minute drill, and then ended up taking the lead going into halftime 17-13. So Malcolm Jenkins doing all these things where he's making plays, he's getting involved in tackles, didn't have any pass deflections, but he took away so many first, second, third reads, forcing Aaron Rodgers deeper into his progressions, forcing him to have to play off script, and forcing him several times to throw the ball away as well, which really is just as good, even though it doesn't show up on the stat sheet by the end of the year. You see all of that and the battle of the minds that he brings as a veteran and experienced presence. And keep in mind that this was the third week of the season with no offseason, so he's kind of just living off of instincts and experience at this point while he's learning this new system with Dennis Allen. Because yes, it was a second stint with the New Orleans Saints, but it's an entirely different defense than before he left and joined Philadelphia. So I'm going to give that week 3 performance Malcolm Jenkins' top performance of the 2020 season. Again, if you feel any differently and you had liked another performance by him, or if you have any suggestions about whose performance we should look at next, more in depth, go ahead and drop those in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or you can tweet them at me at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter.